how honored and humbled I am to be here on this particular day. You know, we're going to have a lot of remembrances of 9/11, but none will be quite like this one, I don't believe. Because as time goes by, not that it's right, but it's just something that naturally happens. The memories begin to fade. We don't think quite as much about what happened. But today we gather here not as politicians, not as chairman of this or chairman of that, but as Americans. On this great day of American mourning and remembrance. We draw together today to pay respect and tribute to those brothers and sisters taken from us on a day when the dark heart of evil appeared suddenly in an impossibly clear blue sky. Husbands, fathers, mothers, wives, brothers, sisters, children, yeah, Bob, even those little girls with the pigtails running through the backyard. Little did they know what they would face on that fateful day. The heart-stopping images of that Tuesday are etched in our national memory in a way unlike any other in modern history. Even today, they evoke extreme pain and sorrow. New Yorkers sprinting just paces away from rubble and deadly clouds of destruction. Pentagon personnel still bleeding and dazed, rushing to evacuate the most seriously injured. And we can't forget the heroes that were mentioned earlier, those on Flight 93, huddling together in prayer and planning before taking the last frenzied steps of their lives and ultimately denying the enemy its final conquest. As someone who served nearly 27 years in the United States Air Force in defense of our country, I've met many people who have earned recognition and honors for their bravery and selflessness. But the acts of so many of our great Americans on that day, those first responders, were every bit as deserving of our respect as the most courageous war hero. As we look back, it's important to remember that although nearly 3,000 people died that day on 9/11, they weren't the only targets. The cowardly violence inflicted by Al-Qaeda had a much broader objective. You see, the intended target was the heart of America itself and all that we stand for. Think for a moment about the woman at your local town meeting, speaking out and asking for a crossing guard for her community. Her right to do that, her freedom of speech, was under attack on 9/11. Recall the man in the pew in church behind you, maybe singing a little off key. His right to do that, his right to worship his God, was under attack on 9/11. And think of your friends and your family and your neighbors who live and work in a nation where they can choose their own leaders and be involved in the making of our nation's laws. Our right to do that, our freedom to self-govern, was under attack on 9/11. Those who hated us enough to crash airplanes into buildings simply can't abide a country where these types of freedoms exist. But you know, and I know, that we are endowed by our Creator with these unalienable rights. And no amount of cruelty or aggression can ever change that. When the flames of those terrible explosions died down and the full-throated cries of the victims echoed into silence, the essence of America still remained. Yes, buildings and airplanes fell. But the core of who we are as Americans stood strong, and it still stands strong today. Many of you came here today to pay respects to the fallen. We all did. Others came because we naturally want to fellowship with others at times of sorrow and remembrance like this. But I imagine there are some here today who came because even after a decade has passed, we're still wondering, what can we learn from this epic tragedy? For those of you looking for that answer, allow me to suggest this fundamental lesson from 9/11. And here it is. Because the foundation of America is built on the bedrock of faith and freedom, our enemies can shake our house, ladies and gentlemen, but they will never tear it down. Now, we'll be forced to relearn this lesson if some people in our country have their way. I was shocked and saddened to read an opinion column by Mr. E.J. Dionne, a prominent supporter of our president, who proclaimed to his readers just 2 days ago, and I quote, "It's time to put 9/11 behind us." He even went so far as to claim that America and the world were never really threatened by Al-Qaeda and its schemes. Well, folks, as an officer on the staff of U.S. Special Operations Command, where I was when I retired, having worked with men and women like the ones that went into Pakistan just a few months ago and escorted Mr. bin Laden out, I saw firsthand how our military's response to the threats and attacks that led up to 9/11. So I can tell you this: the threat was real then, and the threat is very real today.